Hello everybody and welcome to our geography lesson today. We've learnt so much so far about the country of Brazil, about features of Brazil and about cities, and today we're going to be focusing on the climate and the weather. So let's get started. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so our learning question today is, what is the weather like in Brazil? Have you got any guesses? So during our lesson, this is what we're going to be going over today. We're going to be recapping those 7 continents of the world. We're going to be locating Brazil on our world map and on our map of South America. We're going to be looking at the climate of Brazil. Now, it's a huge country, as we know. There are different climate zones that we're going to explore today. And we're going to think about how the weather in Brazil changes during the different seasons. And then we're going to look at some examples of extreme weather in Brazil. What could that be about? So for our lesson today, as usual, you're going to need your paper, a pencil, and you're going to need your great geography brains, which you've had with you all the time so far this unit. So if you're missing any of those things, you can pause the video now and go and grab it. Great, so we're ready to begin. So your first challenge of the lesson is, can you remember the 7 continents of the world? And just like we did last lesson, I'm going to see if you can name them all by their shape. Now, if you want to give yourself an extra challenge, you could try and say them all in less than 30 seconds or write them all in less than 2 minutes, which would be really impressive. So I'm going to show you those continents now. Let's have a look at the different shapes. I switched the order up to make it a bit more challenging. So pause the video and write down the name or say the name of each of these continents. Off you go. Good luck. Okay, let's have a look. So the first one, I don't think you can see the letter A, but it's there on the top left. First one is Africa. And B is Antarctica, the one right at the bottom of the on the map. And C is North America. All of those little islands around here might help us remember that one. Look at those, North America. D is Australia, or Australasia Oceania, as we've spoken about. E, oh, that looks familiar. Europe, and there we are, there's our small island there. So the UK is in Europe. And F is Asia. And last one, G, is, what's that last one? What's we missing? It's South America. And as we know, South America is where Brazil is found, which is what we've been looking at. Okay, so let's carry on with our lesson. We're going to zoom in on the continent of South America, and we've done loads of work so far on remembering those different countries that you can see here. So I'm going to challenge you again on them in our next lesson. So just have a look at those. And today we're focusing on the country of Brazil, which is the largest country on the continent of South America. Okay. So let's move with our first slide. And today, we're going to be looking at the climate and the weather in Brazil. Now, climate and weather are very similar, but they have slightly different meanings. So we're going to have a look at those 2 key words. So can you say climate? And can you say weather? Okay, so let's have a look at those 2 words. Climate is the average weather conditions in a particular location. So that's what it's usually like, or what weather we would expect to see in that particular area or location. And then weather is a condition of the atmosphere at one particular time. So the weather might be different on Monday than it is on Wednesday, for example, but the climate is what we would expect to see in that particular place. So climate is what we expect to see, and weather is what weather it is on different particular days or times, okay? Now, we're going to look at the climate of Brazil. So the type of weather that we would expect to see in Brazil. Now, Brazil, as we know, is a huge country. And that means there are lots of different climates within Brazil. So if you have a look at the image on the screen now, this map with all its different colours shows the different climate zones of Brazil. Because it's such a huge country and the climate changes depending on where you are in Brazil. So if you look at the darker blue sections, for example, the darker blue areas, so in the northwest of Brazil, and one part in the northeast of Brazil, you can just see there, they have warm temperatures and lots of rain all year round. Now, if you look at the red and orange areas, so towards the east of the country, on the right-hand side of the map, the red and orange areas are warm and dry all year. So they're more like kind of desert areas, whereas the darker blue areas where it's hot and wet, this is where the Amazon rainforest is. So that's why the Amazon rainforest has such a humid climate, because it's in that part of Brazil. Now then, if we look at the green areas, they have different summer and winter seasons, and their climate is mild. That means it's not too hot and it's not too cold. It's warmer in the summer and it's colder in the winter. One of the reasons why the north of Brazil has a very hot and wet climate is because it's near the equator. And the equator is an invisible line that goes all the way around the world. It goes around our planet. And it's halfway between the North Pole and the South Pole. And around the equator, the countries and the locations, the places, usually have a very hot and very wet climate, okay? So that's why the north of Brazil is more hot and wet, whereas southern Brazil is in the southern hemisphere, which means their seasons are the opposite to here in the UK. So the UK is in the northern hemisphere, so we have our summer, or when we have our summer in Brazil, it's the winter, especially in the south of Brazil when the seasons change. So that's because we're on different hemispheres. So when it's our summer, it's their winter. And when it's their winter, it's our summer, and so on. The UK is in the northern hemisphere of the Earth, and Brazil is in the southern hemisphere. So have a look again at the map of those different areas and the different climate zones. So how does it change from the northern parts to the southern parts? And that's going to help you with your next task. So your next task is to finish my sentences just by saying them on this part. So we don't need to write these ones. So why is the climate different in different parts of Brazil? So here you've got some sentence starters and you're going to think about what goes in the gaps. So Brazil has a varied climate because there's a gap. The north of Brazil is near the blank, which means the climate is blank and blank. Okay, what could go into those gaps? So see if you can remember the answers to those questions and fill in the gaps. If you need to go back in the video to check the answers, you can do. Otherwise, pause the video now and have a go. Okay, great work, everybody. So we should have our answers as Brazil has a varied climate because it is such a big country. The north of Brazil is near the equator. Remember, that's the invisible line that goes around the Earth, which means the climate is hot and wet. Further south, the climate is more mild. Okay. So that means it's not too hot and not too cold. Well done if you remembered those facts. Great work. Okay. Now, let's have a think about how the weather So day to day, how the weather changes during different seasons. Now, as I said, the seasons in Brazil are different to the seasons here in the UK. Some parts of Brazil, the seasons don't change very much at all. And some parts of Brazil have summer and winter times, but they are different to here in the UK. They're the opposite, because the UK is in the northern hemisphere and Brazil is in the southern hemisphere. So because Brazil is such a huge country and the climates are different in different places, we're going to focus on 3 different parts of Brazil, so 3 different locations. And the first one is Brasilia, which is the capital city of Brazil, and it's located in central Brazil. So if you have a look at the table on the screen, you can see the average temperature for different months of the year. So this is the average temperature here. Now I've chosen 3 months of the year to show you how the temperature changes throughout the year. So you can see in January, it's 21 degrees Celsius. In April, it's also 21 degrees Celsius on average. And then August, let's see if I can get the mouse, it's around 20 degrees Celsius. So you can see that the temperature doesn't really change that much throughout the year. Then if you look at the bottom line, you can see the average rainfall, and that's in millimeters. So how much rain falls on the ground in those months. So you can see in January, that is 247 millimeters. That's quite a lot of rain. And in April, you can see that it's 123 millimeters. And lastly, in August, you can see that it's only 13 millimeters of rainfall. So August is the driest month, one of the drier parts of the year in Brasilia. So you can see that temperature stays the same more or less throughout the year, but the average rainfall is a lot higher in January. It's about half of that in April and then a lot lower in August. So that's an example of Brasilia, which is in the central part of Brazil. Now, let's have a look at the next city, which is Manaus, which is located in the northwest of Brazil. So it's in the region near the Amazon rainforest. Remember, that means it's near the, what's it called, that invisible line? The equator, well done. So it's going to be very hot and very wet. Now, if you have a look at the temperature, you can see already that the temperatures throughout the year are hotter than they are in Brasilia. So in January, you've got 26 degrees, April 26, and August 27. That's pretty hot. So it rarely gets that hot here in the UK, apart from summertime maybe sometimes. So the average temperature is higher than it is in Brasilia. And the rainfall we can see in January, we've got 264 millimeters. It's quite a lot of rain. April, 311, even more rain. And then August, you've got 47 millimeters. So a little bit lower, but still a lot more rain than you had in Brasilia. Okay. Now, the third location that we're going to look at is called Curitiba, which is located in the southeast of Brazil. So it's on the coast and it's further south than both Manaus and Brasilia. Now you can see that the temperature is lower, so it's colder down south in the south of Curitiba. So in January, your average temperature is 20 degrees, April, 17 degrees, and August, 14 degrees. So throughout the year, it's colder than it is in both Brasilia, the capital, and Manaus. And the average rainfall you can see in January, it's 165 millimeters. In April, it's 90 millimeters. And in August, it's 74 millimeters. So if we compare to the other places, it's still a lot less rain than there is in Manaus, but there's more rain than there is in Brasilia. So those are some different locations in Brazil and some different types of weather that we see in different parts of the country. Now, would you like to live in one of these places? Or where would you like to live? Maybe you're a person that likes really, really hot weather. Maybe you're a person that prefers colder weather. Maybe you're a person that doesn't like rain at all. And maybe you're a person that likes to play outside in the rain. Which of these places would you like to live in? So let's have a quick look at them again. So we've got Brasilia, which is in the center of the country. It's quite warm throughout the year, but not too hot. And there's a lot of rain in January, but less in other parts of the year. Then we have Manaus, which is in the Amazon rainforest region. It's a lot hotter throughout the year and there's a lot more rain. And then we have Curitiba in the south, where the temperatures are a bit lower, but there's slightly less rainfall than there is in Manaus and a bit more than there is in Brasilia. So have a think. Which of these locations would you rather live in and why? What kind of weather do you like? Now, I quite like warm weather, but I don't really like the rain. I don't really like going out in the rain, especially if I'm going for a walk or something. So I don't think I'd live in Manaus because it rains a bit too much. But I do like warm weather, and Brasilia is warmer than Curitiba. So I think I would rather live in Brasilia region, in that area. So you have a think. What kind of weather do you like and which place would you like to live in? If you need to rewind the video to go and have a look at the different weather in different places, then you can do. Otherwise, pause the video now and write or say your sentences. Okay, great work, everybody. I'd love to hear where you would like to live in Brazil. Now, final thing that we're going to look at today is examples of extreme weather in Brazil. What I mean by extreme weather is weather that doesn't happen very often, and when it does, it's quite dramatic, so it can affect people's lives quite a lot. Now, one example of extreme weather that we can see, here is one example that we can see of extreme weather in Brazil, and this has happened in recent years. So in recent years, as the climate gets hotter, so because of something called climate change, global warming that you might have heard of before, this causes the whole planet Earth to get hotter. So the seas are getting hotter and the Earth is getting hotter as well. Now in recent years, as the climate of the world gets hotter, that means that the rainfall in Brazil has increased because the climate is a lot hotter within Brazil, which means the water evaporates and turns into clouds. And the more clouds there are, the more likely it's going to rain. So the hotter it gets, the more rainfall Brazil receives. And this can be a big problem, particularly for the cities in the south of Brazil who aren't used to having so much rainfall. So for example, Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo, these kind of cities, it can cause the cities or the towns to flood. Now you can see on the images there that places that flood can be very, very dangerous and can affect people's lives quite a lot, because floods can cause homes to be destroyed. And they can even cause people to lose their lives. So it's a very, very serious issue in Brazil that's getting worse at the moment because of climate change throughout the planet. So for your final task today, I've got one more sentence starter for you, and I want you to fill in my gaps, please. And again, as always, you can say them or you can write them. So how does climate change cause extreme weather in Brazil? So think about what we've just spoken about. As the climate gets blank, there is more blank in Brazil, and this can cause blank. So if you want to rewind the video to have another look at what we just spoke about, then you can, but have a go at filling in that sentence below. Good luck. Okay, well done, everybody. You should have your sentence written down now, or you've filled in the gaps by saying the words out loud. And we should have written, as the climate gets hotter, so remember the whole world is getting hotter. As the climate gets hotter, there is more rain in Brazil, and this can cause flooding, which is really dangerous because it can destroy people's homes and some people can lose their lives as well. So that's one of the issues that's facing Brazil and the climate of Brazil at the moment. Okay, brilliant. That concludes our lesson. Now, We've learned so much today. Well done for all your hard work. You've been amazing as always. That's the end of our lesson. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the weather and climate of Brazil. As always, please send any work that you've completed or any videos to your teachers. So well done. Next lesson, we're going to be comparing the climate of Brazil with our climate here in the UK. So well done for your efforts today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.